Shannon Handy sits down with County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher.
I interviewed Supervisor Fletcher here inside this conference room at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office, where he and his team spent several hours a day during the pandemic. He spoke about his successes, his regrets, and his message to San Diegans as we approach June 15th.
You know, the first couple weeks of responding to COVID were really a blur. I mean, it started and then it all unfolded so quickly.
For San Diego County Board of Supervisors Chair Nathan Fletcher, the past almost year and a half has been one of the most exhausting periods of his political career.
How long were your days?
I mean, I was up at 5, you know, usually work until 11, 12, you know, sleep for a few hours, back up. And it was a relentless push because, you know, each day was different.
In mid-February, Fletcher stood alongside other county leaders to announce an emergency declaration had been extended in the county after he says it became clear controlling the spread of COVID to avoid a collapse of our healthcare system was going to take a long time.
If you look back to January, a lot of people thought this will just last
2 weeks.
Exactly.
2 weeks. And I'll never forget being in a meeting and we had all the scientists and the doctors and the projections and the you know, analysis of options. And I said, okay, that's all great, but when does it end? And it was at that moment that I realized we're going to be doing this for a year or longer.
Really?
Because until you have a vaccine, there's no way out.
Businesses were forced to shut down. Corporations told employees to work remotely. Students and teachers also transitioned from the classroom to their homes.
It was hard. You know, it was challenging. It was frustrating. I mean, I not only, you know, being a county supervisor and involved every single day in COVID, but I'm also a parent of 5 kids.
From there, county leaders transformed the convention center into a homeless shelter, a controversial decision Fletcher says was necessary.
That was all happening at the same time Boston and other places were having significant outbreaks in their homeless shelters. And so I think that was a success story. We managed to get all those folks moved, and then we centralized services.
Fletcher considers the county's ability to set up dozens of testing sites and vaccine superstations among his other proud moments. As for his regrets,
one of the really heartbreaking things was to see how differently COVID impacted certain communities. We know this was the most uneven recession we ever had, and I wish we could have done more sooner to help those communities most impacted.
When asked about tension amongst his fellow board members, Fletcher says politics played a significant role.
It was very challenging, and it made it very, very, very hard, and it continues to this day. When you look at who's getting vaccinated and who's not, that has become a partisan issue. The more conservative areas have the lowest vaccination rates, and the vaccine is not ideological. It's just to save lives.
With frustration mounting not just between his colleagues but within the community, Fletcher was on the receiving end of criticism. At times it got so bad he needed police protection outside his home.
Did you ever take any of the criticism personally?
Well, you can't help but not take it personally. I mean, you have people come into your house. You know, on Christmas Eve, when your youngest child says, "Daddy, we need to take the police officers some cookies because they're sitting in our driveway and they're not home with their families." That's a moment where you realize, like, my gosh, you know, I mean, you know, the criticism, you know, was so intense and so pervasive, you know, you just, you know, it was hard to escape at times.
Looking back, Fletcher stands by his decisions, saying lives were saved because of them.
As we approach June 15th, what's your message to San Diegans?
I think we got to take a moment to recognize the loss of life, recognize the negative economic impacts and all the other negative impacts, but realize that we did as best we could to get through a truly unprecedented situation.
Shannon Handy, News.